everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to a shameless summertime book haul. So today I have for you about 30 books, maybe more, but around 30 books that I have bought over the last 3 or 4 months from May to September, just wrapping up everything that I have acquired over the summer. A lot of these books I don't know a lot about, so I won't go into too much detail about them. I like to go into a book without knowing too much about it. I enjoy it more that way. So without further ado, let's start in on these books. So the first book I want to talk about is Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. This is the book I'm currently reading. It came out September 1st, a few days ago. So I had it pre-ordered and I got it. I'm enjoying it so far. It picks up exactly where the first book, Serpent and Dove, leaves off. So they're dealing with the fallout from the events from that book, and I'm really enjoying it and liking the characters a lot and getting back into this France world of witches. The next 2 books I want to talk about is My Lady Jane and My Plain Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. These are kind of historical, fictional retellings. I believe My Lady Jane follows a 1600s, 1500s kind of queen in that time, and just kind of a retelling of her life. I've heard this is humorous, I've heard it's entertaining, so I'm excited to pick this one up. And this one is My Plain Jane, and I'm so excited to get into this one because I read Jane Eyre for the first time this year, and this is a retelling of Jane Eyre, and Charlotte Bronte is a character within this story, and I think there's ghosts. This may be a good spooky October read for me. And there is a 3rd book in this kind of Jane series that is My Calamity Jane that I don't have, but I'm really wanting to pick it up. It is a fictional retelling of Calamity Jane on the Western frontier. So I'm excited to read this series. I've heard it's great. I've read one of Cynthia Hand's books and I loved it. I'm excited to get into this series. The next book I picked up is Not Filmed by Marisha Pessl. This is a horror thriller that is set around, I believe, maybe like an indie filmmaker, and his family has maybe disappeared. I'm not sure. I've heard it is really spooky. I've heard it is like mixed media, so there's like dark web pages within this book, and I have just heard excellent things. Definitely want to pick this up next month in October. We will just go right along in the mystery thriller genre. The next book I picked up is truly Devious. This is the first book in a series. I believe this is more like a YA young adult thriller, but I've heard it can get pretty spooky. It follows, I believe our main character's name is Stevie, and she is starting school at this kind of prestigious academy, and she wants to become a detective, and the school where she's starting kind of has a dark past. I believe the beneficiary of the school had a wife and a daughter who mysteriously disappeared several years ago, and Stevie wants to figure that crime out. And as she delves into the happenings of the history of her school, she kind of has some mysterious stuff happen to her. This is a 3-book series and all 3 books are out. I have the first book and I'm excited to get into it. I don't think I mentioned this is by Maureen Johnson. Another thriller I'm looking forward to is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. And I've heard great things about this. Like I said in my September TBR, I don't know very much about it, and that's how I want to go into it. Look at this cover though. It is creepy. Moving right along with the thrillers, this is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I've heard excellent things about this book. I believe it's another kind of young adult thriller, and we follow a high school student who is doing maybe like her senior project on an unsolved mystery, and kind of like Truly Devious, like she starts having some interesting things happen in her life. I've heard this is so good. I've heard the twist is not easy to figure out, so that intrigues me, and I'm excited to get into it in this fall season. Another mystery I've picked up recently is Things in Small Jars by Jess Kidd. I believe this is set in 19th century England, and we follow a female detective during this time period, so that's really interesting. and I believe she is investigating a mystery. I'm not sure exactly what the foundation of that mystery is, but I believe this book gets into they're called curiosity cabinets that were kind of held in esteem by the upper levels of society during this period. I think she's kind of aided by some characters who I think they might be like ghostly and kind of freakish, so kind of like the freak show type circuses of this time period gets explored in this book. It sounds really creepy, and I've heard that it is really good also. Let's jump into some fantasy. I picked up Foundryside and Shortfall by Robert Jackson Bennett, and I have heard great things about this author, really all of his works. Excited to pick up this series. Funny story, I had to order this one on eBay. The hardcover of this copy is like $100 anywhere you look. This might be like the UK cover, but the American cover of the paperback I did not like at all. I'll like insert it here because I was not about it. I think these covers are beautiful. So I had to settle with the paperback of this cover, and then Shortfall actually just recently came out, so it was easier to pick up. I believe this follows our main character. This is an adult fantasy, and I believe the main character has a magic ability to kind of tell objects what to do, I believe. I've heard it described as a fantastical kind of coding magic, so I'm excited to get into this series. Like I've said, I've heard Robert Jackson Bennett is incredible. I haven't read any of his work before, so I'm excited to have this series on hand. I feel like this book cover is so well known in the booktube universe right now, but this is Beach Read by Emily Henry, and it is a romance, and we follow, I believe, two writers who are spending their summer at a beach, and they're both kind of going through a writer's block, so they decide to write each other's genres. I believe the female character is a romance writer, and then I believe the male character, he might write nonfiction, and I think he's doing like a book on cults in this book. So we see how their paths kind of cross. I've heard that this book is actually a little darker than the cover entails, and that I believe our female character is going through a difficult family situation, maybe. I've honestly heard mixed reviews. I've heard it's disappointing. I've heard it's incredible. I honestly am not very hard to please. I'm easy to entertain. I can have a good time with most things, so I'm excited to pick this book up. This tome is These Truths by Jill Lepore. It is a history of the United States, and I will just read you a little synopsis from the back, but it is widely hailed for its sweeping, sobering account of the American past. This one-volume history of America places truth itself, a devotion to facts, proof, and evidence at the center of the nation's history. And we kind of follow the American story beginning in 1492, asking whether the course of events over more than 5 centuries has proven the nation's truths or belied them. To answer that question, we wrestle with the state of American politics, the legacy of slavery and persistence of inequality, and the nature of technological change. I love a good nonfiction, and I'm excited to work my way through this. I love American history, so adding to my knowledge of that, I'm all here for. This book I picked up is Lovely War by Julie Berry. It's a historical fiction. I believe it's set around World War II, as a lot of historical fiction seems to be. And I believe our characters are kind of embodied by Greek mythological characters. Like, I think Aphrodite might be in here, or maybe Aphrodite is guiding a couple in this time period. I'm not sure, but it sounded like a great time. History and romance and Greek mythology, I was all here for it, and I picked this book up. The next 2 books I picked up are Ash Princess and Lady Smoke. These are the first 2 books in the Ash Princess series by Laura Sebastian, and this is a fantasy series. I believe it's young adult, and we follow our main character who has been kind of imprisoned in her society. She was the princess, and then there was kind of an overthrow of that regime, but the overthrowers have still kind of kept her as kind of a figurehead to just show that they have power over, I believe. I'm not sure if that's a great explanation, but I've heard this series is really good, and I'm excited to get into it. I'm saying I'm excited to get into all these books, obviously, because I bought them. Another YA fantasy I picked up a book for. I picked up the first book in the Girl of Fire and Thorn series. This is by Ray Carson. I've heard excellent things about this series, and look at this cover. all of the books in this series have beautiful covers, so I'm excited to eventually own them all. I don't know very much about the plot, but it's young adult, it's fantasy, and I picked up The Queens of Finburn by Gendar Blake. I can't believe I had to look at that. Her Three Dark Crowns series is very well loved. I don't have any of the books in it, I haven't read them, but this is a novella within the series, and it was a good price on Amazon, and I knew I wanted to read the series eventually, so picked this up. It follows, the series I believe follows 3 sisters who basically have to grow up and learn to kill the other ones because only one of them can have the crown, and that is just how this society has gone. Every so often, I guess every generation, there are triplets and they all have to fight for the crown. So looking forward to starting my collection of this series. The next book I want to talk about is The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. I believe this would be considered contemporary. This might be, I might have like 2 other contemporaries on this list. Not a genre I read a lot. I've heard great things about this book. I've heard good things about Mindy McGinnis, and she has another book that I'm really interested in. I think it's called Be Not Far From Me, and it sounds like the young adult female version of Hatchet, and say no more. I want to pick that book up too, so I wanted to pick this book up and work my way through Mindy McGinnis's backlist. Another nonfiction book on this list is Letter to a Christian Nation by Sam Harris. This is just a quick little letter, I suppose. Richard Dawkins' book that I read last month mentioned this a lot, and I like Sam Harris, so I gave this book a click on Amazon. This next book with another beautiful cover is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This is a kind of a siren fantasy. I believe we follow a main character who is supposed to take over the rule of this kingdom, but her magic is unsatisfactory, maybe? I'm not sure. It's about mermaids. On here it says princess, pirate, stowaway, mermaid. The crew makes the queen. Sounds like a great pirate fantasy, and I'm excited to get into this. The next book I have to talk about is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. This is a historical fiction, and I believe it follows, I'm not sure the exact time period, but it follows a horrible maritime disaster, and I've heard that it is guaranteed to make you cry. I've heard it is hard-hitting, and I'm excited. This is not a genre that I read a lot of, but I enjoy it, so I'm excited to read this book. I picked up The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I've heard nothing but excellent things about this book. I believe we followed 2 magicians who travel with a circus, and they kind of have to compete with each other, and I think this book ranges over several years. I've heard it is just magical and atmospheric. I've heard Erin Morgenstern's writing is just lyrical and beautiful. I'm excited to get into this because I also have The Starless Sea, but I kind of want to read her books in order. So excited to pick this up. It is so well loved, a lot of people's favorite book. I picked up the first book in the Thief series by Megan Wallen Turner, and I've heard great things about this book. I believe it's finished now. I think the 6th book just came out. So I love these covers also. I think they had a cover redo, and I am just loving these covers, but excited to get into this. Don't know exactly what it's about. I think it's young adult. It's definitely fantasy, and there are 6 books in this series, so lots of entertainment. I recently picked up The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is a contemporary. I need to expand on my contemporary reading, and I thought this would be an excellent book. I have never read a bad review for this book. I have just heard that it is very hard-hitting, and I am excited to give it a read. Angie Thomas has a lot of other books that are so well reviewed, so I'm excited to start reading her backlist as well. I picked up Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This was totally a impulse purchase. Reagan from Peru's Project here on YouTube recommended this book, and I got on Amazon, and a used copy of it was like $4, and I am just the owner of this book now. So I believe it is a kind of mysterious with maybe some spooky elements. I'm not sure at all, but I own it. This gorgeous book is A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. It is the first book in what I believe will be a trilogy, that the next book, I believe the 3rd book comes out tomorrow, and I just own the 1st book right now, but I definitely want to own this trilogy with these beautiful covers. I have heard this is a very unique fantasy story. We follow our main character, Ophelia, I believe is her name. Love that name. She has a power to touch objects and see their history. So she's happy, satisfied living her life. She curates a museum. Her family starts to pressure her to get married, and they arrange a marriage for her in another kingdom. There has been an occurrence in this world, and now all the kingdoms are on these spires. So she has to go to a spire that is very different from her own. I believe it is much more brutal, much more dangerous. So we follow her as she navigates society in a new kingdom. The next book I have to chat about is Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. I've actually already read this book, so let me give you a brief synopsis. We follow our main character. She has had an accident in the past, and now she only can remember one day at a time. When she wakes up in the morning, she has forgotten everything. Sometimes she only remembers things from her childhood. Sometimes she can remember things into her early 20s. So we follow her as she kind of tries to pick through her past by journaling every day and then rereading her journal at the beginning of every day. We kind of have people in her life that might be kind of playing some tricks on her, but honestly, I was just not surprised by anything that happened in this book. And with a thriller, I want to be shocked. I want to be surprised, and I just wasn't with this book, so I will probably be unhauling it soon. Okay, we are wrapping up the tail end of this haul. This book I picked up is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is so well loved. There's, I believe, an Amazon adaptation of this as a TV show now, and just great reviews. I actually think Reese Witherspoon is in the TV show, so big community of people who like this book. It is kind of this book is set in suburban Ohio in the 90s, I believe, and we follow, I think, 2 different families and how their paths kind of intertwine. I think there's a lot of morally gray characters in here that you want to root for, but also have their flaws. So I have heard excellent things about this book, and I'm excited to read it and watch the TV show. I picked up The Bride Test by Helen Huang. I read The Kiss Quotient by her and loved it. This book is a romance, and I believe it follows our female character is a mother, a single mother who lives in maybe Vietnam, an Asian country, and she kind of has an arranged marriage to this kind of socially awkward, I believe he has autism spectrum disorder, hero in our story, and we watched their romance and how it unfolds. I flew through The Kiss Quotient, so I know that whenever I do pick this up, it will be an easy 2-day read for me. Some box sets that I have picked up recently are this beautiful Harry Potter box set. I actually bought this for Nick, my husband, for his birthday. I read the Harry Potter series. I've actually only read it once in grade school, and Nick has not read it at all. So I picked this up for him for his birthday this summer. He was interested in getting into it. And just look at the winter vibes from Hogwarts. I love it. I love it. Going along that nostalgic line, I also picked up the Percy Jackson series in this beautiful box set with these spines that line up. Loved the Percy Jackson series when I was growing up, and I really am excited and looking forward to giving it a reread and getting back into this world of Camp Half-Blood. I have so many good memories of this series. The last box set I want to chat about is the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. I have not read any Leigh Bardugo books, but I have 6 of her books. So I picked this set up because it is the first books in her Grishaverse that 6 of Crows is also set in. Those are the 2 other books that I have. And then I also have Ninth House by her. So I have got to start working my way through Leigh Bardugo's books. I've heard great things about them, and gonna go into this without knowing too much, except that it should be good. Okay, the last books I want to chat about are actually graphic novels. Nick and I started rewatching Avatar. Okay, full transparency, Nick and I have probably watched Avatar 18, 20 times through. We have the series, and it is just the best thing to put on the TV to have on. So we started rewatching it again whenever it was on Netflix, and I picked up these graphic novels, just wanting to live in the Avatar universe, not leave it. I mean, these are just beautiful. So excited to flip through these and just Never Let Aang and Zuko Go. Alright you guys, those are all the books I picked up over the summer. Let me know in a comment down below what you've been purchasing recently. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already.